Star Trek admits it. The Enterprise wouldn't have survived without Spock, and here's the reason why. For decades, Star Trek fans have praised Spock for his logical mind, emotional restraint, and unwavering loyalty. But as the franchise has expanded across generations and timelines, one truth has quietly emerged across all its stories. The USS Enterprise, in all its incarnations, would never have survived without Spock. Whether explicitly stated or subtly acknowledged, the legacy of the half-human, half-Vulcan science officer goes beyond logic. He was the soul of the ship. Now, with newer shows and retrospective storytelling, Star Trek has essentially admitted what fans have long believed. The Enterprise owes its survival, time and again, to Spock's unique presence. More than a science officer, Spock was technically the Enterprise's science officer and later its first officer, but his value went far beyond his Starfleet rank. His logical reasoning prevented catastrophic decisions in moments of panic, while his surprising flashes of empathy saved the crew from destruction, sometimes even from themselves. In the original series TOS, Spock was repeatedly the counterbalance to Captain Kirk's emotional and instinctive command style. This wasn't just a narrative trick, it was a survival mechanism. Kirk was a brilliant leader, but prone to taking wild risks. Without Spock's logic grounding his decisions, many of Kirk's missions would have ended in disaster. When the two worked in tandem, the Enterprise achieved the impossible. That balance became one of the franchise's most enduring dynamics. Episodes like the Galileo 7 showcase Spock's analytical thinking under pressure. Stranded on a hostile planet, he calculated the odds of survival and made command decisions based on logic alone, decisions that initially alienated the crew but ultimately saved their lives. Time and again, Spock proved that logic, when wielded with purpose, could be as powerful as brute force or passionate heroism. The mirror that reflected humanity. What Star Trek has more recently begun to explore is how Spock also embodied the moral compass of the Enterprise. In Strange New Worlds, the character is portrayed during his early years aboard the ship, wrestling with his Vulcan identity and human emotions. It's a more vulnerable portrayal, but it reinforces the same theme. Spock is the bridge between cold logic and human compassion. The modern iterations of Star Trek are more willing to admit that Spock wasn't just useful because of his intellect. He was necessary because of his empathy. He might have denied it outwardly, but Spock cared deeply for his crewmates, and his actions repeatedly reflected that. His decision to sacrifice himself in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, crawling into a radiation-flooded chamber to restore the ship's warp core, was the ultimate proof. Without Spock, the Enterprise would have been destroyed by Khan's Genesis device. The scene, now iconic, was Star Trek's most brutal acknowledgement that survival sometimes demands more than brilliance. It requires love, loyalty, and a willingness to die for others. A constant across universes, what cements Spock's indispensability is how he's been preserved across timelines and universes. The Kelvin timeline movies, the J.J. Abrams reboot series went out of their way to reintroduce Leonard Nimoy's original Spock as Spock Prime, making him the emotional core and moral guide of the new timeline. Even as a displaced figure from another universe, Spock was again the one-person Starfleet and the Enterprise could rely on to offer clarity in times of galactic confusion. This narrative choice wasn't accidental. It was Star Trek subtly reinforcing the idea that Spock isn't just one of the many legacy characters. He's the glue that holds the Enterprise together, no matter the timeline. Even in death, Spock's legacy continued to shape the crew. In Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, the crew is willing to risk their careers and steal the Enterprise to restore his life. That's not just loyalty, it's recognition. They knew the ship wouldn't be the same without him. The final admission, perhaps the most pointed acknowledgement of Spock's importance, came not in an action sequence, but in words. In Star Trek, Picard and Strange New Worlds, the newer series have allowed characters to openly reflect on the mythic status Spock holds in the galaxy. His legacy is discussed with reverence by new generations of officers. His mixed heritage, once a source of internal conflict, is now honored as a symbol of unity in the Federation. Spock didn't just help the Enterprise survive battles and spatial anomalies. He helped the ship and its crew navigate moral gray zones, alien cultures, and there,